There comes a moment in every conflict when confidence turns into quiet fear. For Germany, that moment didn't arrive on a battlefield filled with smoke and gunfire. It arrived in reports, numbers, shipping logs, factory outputs, and intelligence briefings. It was the moment Germany realized that America was not just another enemy nation. It was an entire system built for endurance, scale, and replacement. This realization changed everything. Germany entered the war with a belief rooted in its early successes. Blitzkrieg had worked. Speed, precision, and psychological shock had crushed opponents who relied on slower mobilization and outdated thinking. German leadership believed wars were won quickly by elite forces, superior tactics, and fear. In their calculations, America was far away, divided, inexperienced, and slow to act. On paper, it looked like a nation that could be delayed, discouraged, or even ignored. That assumption would become one of the greatest strategic misjudgments in modern history. What Germany failed to understand was that America's true strength was not immediate aggression, it was capacity. While Germany focused on battlefield brilliance, America focused on infrastructure. When the United States committed, it didn't merely send soldiers, it activated an entire civilization. Factories that once produced cars, refrigerators, and farm equipment transformed almost overnight into war machines. Assembly lines ran day and night. Workers who had never held a weapon became the backbone of victory. Women entered factories in historic numbers. Farmers increased output. Railways synchronized. Ports expanded. This wasn't reaction, it was orchestration. German intelligence began noticing something unsettling. Ships that were sunk in the Atlantic were being replaced faster than they could be destroyed. Aircraft losses didn't reduce American air presence, they increased it. Where Germany calculated attrition, America neutralized it through replacement. This was the shock of scale, the realization that destruction no longer created advantage. Every loss was absorbed, corrected, and countered with more force than before. Psychologically, this was devastating. German strategy depended on breaking an enemy's will, but America's will did not fracture under pressure, it hardened. There was no panic, no collapse, no desperation. Instead, there was patience, planning, expansion. Germany began to understand that it wasn't fighting an army reacting emotionally to events. It was fighting a nation executing a long-term plan with calm determination. This is where the deeper lesson emerges, one that connects history to the message of protect your peace. America did not reveal its full strength at the start. It did not rush to prove itself. It prepared quietly. It built systems instead of slogans. While Germany chased immediate dominance, America invested in sustainability. In life, as in history, those who protect their peace often appear underestimated. They don't argue loudly. They don't rush to respond. They build quietly while others waste energy on intimidation. Germany's shock came from realizing too late that America was designed for long conflict. Its geography protected it. Its economy fed it. Its population replenished it. You could bomb a factory, another would open. You could sink a ship, 10 more were already underway. The war became less about winning battles and more about surviving an unstoppable process. Germany wasn't being outfought, it was being outproduced. This moment marked the collapse of illusion. Germany understood that no matter how skilled its generals were, no matter how brave its soldiers fought, it could not outlast a system built on scale, coordination, and patience. That realization planted doubt, drained morale, and reshaped strategy. The war was no longer about victory, it became about damage control. In the end, this key point reminds us that real power does not announce itself. It prepares. It builds. It waits. Protecting your peace doesn't mean weakness. It means conserving energy for moments that matter. America was built different because it didn't rely on fear or flash. It relied on depth. And by the time Germany understood that truth, the outcome was already moving beyond its control. Long before Germany felt defeat on the battlefield, it felt something far more dangerous in the mind: inevitability. This was the moment when American industrial power stopped being just a logistical problem and became a form of psychological warfare. Germany realized it was no longer fighting soldiers alone, it was fighting time, math, and momentum. And those are enemies you cannot intimidate. German military doctrine was built around efficiency. Every tank, every aircraft, every shell had to count. Resources were limited, factories were vulnerable, and supply lines were stretched thin across occupied territories. Victory required precision and conservation. At first, Germany believed America's distance and lack of early involvement would keep its industrial impact manageable. But once American production fully activated, the numbers became impossible to ignore. Reports began to tell a frightening story. American factories were producing planes faster than Germany could replace losses. Ships were rolling off assembly lines in days, not months. Entire fleets appeared where intelligence predicted shortages. For Germany, this wasn't just a material imbalance. It was a mental assault. The basic logic of warfare was collapsing. Destruction no longer slowed the enemy, it accelerated its response. This is where industrial power turned into psychological pressure. Imagine fighting an opponent who does not weaken no matter how hard you strike. Every effort you make seems to exhaust only yourself. German commanders faced the reality that even flawless tactics could not overcome infinite replacement. That realization quietly destroyed confidence. When soldiers know that the enemy's losses mean nothing, courage begins to erode. Hope becomes calculation, and calculation becomes despair. America's production machine sent a clear message without speaking a word. This war will continue as long as it takes. Germany could not match that promise. Bombing American factories was nearly impossible. Sabotaging supply lines had minimal effect. Even when American equipment was destroyed, improved versions replaced it quickly. This created a psychological imbalance that no propaganda could fix. Here lies the deeper meaning connected to protect your peace. True dominance does not always confront, it overwhelms through consistency. America didn't chase emotional victories. It didn't react impulsively to setbacks. It simply kept producing, shipping, training, and advancing. That calm persistence sent a message more powerful than threats. Resistance was mathematically futile. German planners began adjusting strategy not for victory, but for survival. Resources were hoarded. Operations were delayed. Risk-taking declined. When an enemy's power feels endless, fear becomes internal. This is the unseen battlefield, where wars are lost before they are officially surrendered. America's industrial rhythm never changed, and that steadiness became terrifying. On the home front, the contrast was stark. American citizens were mobilized with purpose. Workers understood their role. There was order, schedules, systems. Meanwhile, Germany faced shortages, bombing raids, and increasing desperation. The imbalance wasn't just physical, it was emotional. One side operated from stability, the other from strain. Peace of mind became a strategic weapon. This moment teaches a powerful lesson beyond history. People who protect their peace often win long before conflict becomes visible. They don't exhaust themselves reacting to every threat. They build habits, systems, and support structures that allow them to absorb pressure without breaking. America's industrial strength functioned the same way, a shield of preparation that made chaos ineffective. By the time Germany fully grasped the psychological impact of American production, morale had already been damaged beyond repair. Soldiers fought bravely, but belief was fading. Leaders planned carefully, but options were shrinking. The war had become a countdown, not a contest. In the end, industrial power didn't just supply America, it spoke for it. It told Germany that this was not a battle of moments, but a war of endurance. And endurance belongs to those who remain calm, consistent, and prepared. America protected its peace through systems, not noise, and that quiet dominance proved impossible to defeat. Beyond factories, fleets, and firepower, there was something Germany struggled to understand until it was too late: the American mindset. This was not a mindset driven by rage, revenge, or panic. It was calm, calculated, and relentless. Germany had faced emotional enemies before, nations that reacted impulsively to losses or crumbled under pressure. America was different. It absorbed shock, studied failure, and returned stronger. This psychological discipline became one of the most decisive advantages of the war. German strategy relied heavily on fear. Blitzkrieg was designed to overwhelm not only defenses but morale. The expectation was that sudden force would break an enemy's confidence and force mistakes. But when America entered the war, that pattern failed to repeat. Pearl Harbor, instead of creating chaos, produced clarity. There was anger, yes, but it was controlled, focused, and channeled into preparation rather than panic. Germany expected emotional retaliation. What it encountered was organized resolve. American leadership approached the war like a long-term problem, not a short-term reaction. Losses were analyzed, not dramatized. Defeats became data. Strategies were revised. Technologies upgraded, and training refined. Germany noticed something unsettling: American mistakes disappeared quickly. Each engagement showed improvement. This adaptability made America unpredictable in a way that fear-based enemies never were. The calm nature of American command filtered down through the ranks. Soldiers were trained to trust systems, logistics, and leadership. There was confidence that support would arrive, that equipment would function, and that reinforcements would come. This sense of reliability created psychological stability. German forces, increasingly stretched and uncertain, fought under constant pressure, while American forces operated with growing assurance. This is where the connection to protect your peace becomes powerful. Emotional control is a form of strength. America did not allow shock to dictate behavior. It protected its internal stability while engaging external chaos. In life, people who maintain composure during crisis often dominate outcomes. They don't rush decisions. They don't waste energy on fear. They move deliberately. Germany began to realize that it was not wearing America down, it was sharpening it. Every challenge forced innovation. When submarines threatened shipping, new tactics emerged. When aircraft were lost, better designs replaced them. When strategies failed, alternatives were tested without ego. This willingness to evolve without emotional attachment was devastating to an enemy relying on intimidation and tradition. Relentlessness does not always look aggressive. Sometimes it looks boring, repetitive, and methodical. America kept training, kept producing, kept advancing. There were no dramatic declarations at every step, just progress. For Germany, this consistency was frightening. There was no moment of weakness to exploit, no emotional fracture to widen. The mindset extended beyond the battlefield. At home, Americans continued daily life while supporting the war effort. There was sacrifice, but also confidence in the process. This balance between normalcy and commitment preserved morale. Germany, by contrast, lived under constant strain. When a nation loses peace of mind, decision-making suffers. America guarded that peace fiercely. This point delivers a timeless lesson. When you protect your peace, you protect your clarity. Clarity leads to better decisions, better strategies, and better outcomes. America's mindset proved that victory does not belong to the loudest or angriest, but to the most disciplined. By the time Germany recognized this mental advantage, it could not counter it. You cannot intimidate calm. You cannot exhaust patience. You cannot confuse clarity. The American mindset, steady, adaptive, and relentless, became an unstoppable force. In the end, Germany realized that America was built different not just in steel and numbers, but in psychology, and that difference ensured that no matter how long the war lasted, the direction of the outcome would never truly change. One of Germany's greatest miscalculations was its belief that internal division would weaken America. German leaders assumed that racial tension, political disagreement, economic disparity, and cultural differences would fracture the nation under the pressure of war. They believed America was too diverse, too argumentative, and too individualistic to sustain unified action. What they failed to understand was that, when challenged, America had a rare ability to align its differences toward a single purpose. That unity became one of the most powerful forces Germany faced. Unlike authoritarian systems driven by ideology and obedience, American unity was voluntary. People did not move because they were forced, they moved because they believed. Soldiers from different backgrounds fought side by side. Factory workers, farmers, scientists, and engineers all understood their role in the larger mission. This shared direction created momentum that ideology alone could not manufacture. Germany fought for an idea imposed from the top. America fought for a purpose accepted from within. This unity was visible everywhere. Industries coordinated rather than competed. Labor and management reached agreements to maintain production. Scientific communities collaborated on innovation. Even popular culture, music, film, and media reinforced collective resolve. Germany had expected resistance, protests, and fragmentation. Instead, it encountered synchronization. A society that could argue fiercely in peace became remarkably focused in crisis. The psychological impact of this unity was profound. German intelligence observed that American morale remained stable despite casualties and setbacks. There was no widespread collapse of confidence, no internal rebellion threatening the war effort. This consistency made America strategically reliable. When a nation moves as one, planning becomes easier. Execution becomes faster, and recovery becomes inevitable. This point deeply connects to protect your peace. Unity begins internally. When your values, goals, and actions are aligned, external chaos loses its power. America's internal alignment allowed it to operate without constant internal conflict. Energy was not wasted fighting itself. Instead, it was directed outward with purpose and restraint. Germany, by contrast, was increasingly consumed by internal strain. Resources were hoarded, trust eroded, and fear replaced cooperation. When unity collapses, even strong ideologies fail. America demonstrated that alignment is stronger than control. Peace of mind across a population creates resilience that fear cannot sustain. The voluntary nature of American unity also allowed flexibility. Disagreements existed, but they did not paralyze action. Debate led to improvement, not delay. This balance between freedom and focus confused German observers accustomed to rigid command structures. America proved that unity does not require uniformity. It requires shared direction. On the battlefield, this unity translated into trust. Soldiers trusted logistics. Pilots trusted ground crews. Commanders trusted intelligence. Each part of the system reinforced the other. Germany realized it was not fighting disconnected units. It was confronting an integrated organism. Damaging one part did not cripple the whole. This lesson extends far beyond history. People often mistake peace for passivity and unity for weakness. In reality, unity multiplies strength. When you protect your peace by aligning your priorities, distractions lose influence. America's unity allowed it to absorb pressure without fragmentation. By the time Germany recognized the depth of this cohesion, it could not counter it. Bombs could destroy buildings, but not belief. Propaganda could spread fear, but not fracture purpose. America moved forward together, and that collective motion proved unstoppable. In the end, unity over ideology revealed a defining truth. The most powerful force is not enforced agreement, but shared commitment. America was built different because it could unite without losing itself, and that unity protected its peace while reshaping the outcome of history. Every great conflict ends not with a single moment of defeat, but with a gradual understanding that the outcome is no longer negotiable. For Germany, this final realization came quietly and painfully. America's power did not need to prove itself. It did not rely on constant displays of dominance, dramatic speeches, or fear-driven symbolism. It simply moved forward steady, prepared, and unavoidable. By the time Germany fully grasped this truth, the direction of history had already been set. Germany's approach to power was visible and immediate. Military parades, rapid invasions, and symbolic victories were designed to intimidate and overwhelm. Strength was meant to be seen. America's strength, by contrast, operated in silence. It existed in logistics schedules, supply chains, training programs, and planning rooms. There was no rush to impress. Results were allowed to speak. This difference confused German leadership, which was accustomed to measuring power by spectacle. As the war progressed, Germany began to recognize a pattern. America did not respond emotionally to provocation. It did not escalate recklessly after losses. Instead, it adjusted, reinforced, and advanced with precision. There were no desperate gambles, only calculated pressure. This restraint signaled confidence. Only those uncertain of their power feel the need to constantly demonstrate it. This is where the message of protect your peace reaches its strongest expression. When you know your strength, you do not argue for validation. You do not react to every challenge. You remain centered, focused, and disciplined. America protected its internal stability while applying external pressure. That balance created inevitability. German commanders faced a growing awareness that time was no longer an ally. Every delay favored America. Every attempt to shock or intimidate failed. The war shifted from maneuver to math, from strategy to survival. Germany was not being defeated in a dramatic collapse. It was being slowly surrounded by momentum it could not stop. The psychological weight of this realization was immense. When an enemy does not need to prove itself, hope fades. There is no weakness to exploit, no emotional trigger to pull. America's quiet confidence became suffocating. It advanced without haste, knowing the outcome would arrive regardless of resistance. This realization also extended to the global stage. Allies aligned with America not out of fear, but trust. America's reliability, consistency, and restraint made it a stabilizing force. Germany, increasingly isolated, could not compete with that credibility. Power that reassures is stronger than power that threatens. In personal terms, this lesson is timeless. The strongest individuals are not the loudest. They don't seek conflict to feel important. They build quietly, protect their peace, and let time do the work. America embodied this principle on a national scale. It did not chase dominance, it embodied it through preparation and discipline. By the end, Germany understood that America had never needed to announce its arrival. It had been building, aligning, and preparing all along. The realization was devastating because it came too late. Outcomes had already been decided by systems, mindset, unity, and patience. The final truth is simple yet powerful. Real strength is calm. Real power is quiet. And those who protect their peace often control the future without ever raising their voice. America was built different. Not because it demanded recognition, but because it earned inevitability